This will come as no surprise, but fall is the season for layering. So today I'm going to share how to layer creatively to make more use out of the items already in your closet for fall. As always, I'm going to share these tips from the lens of elements of style. That way it doesn't matter what you have in your closet or even what your personal style is. You can simply use these as ideas for outfits. If you like the idea of understanding elements of style and want to use these to get more use out of your clothes, shop smart, and shift to a more slow fashion approach to your closet, then I have a course and we deep dive into these elements of styles. So I take all of my experience and knowledge as both a commercial and personal stylist, and I put them into this course. And I priced it at a really accessible point because I honestly think understanding these elements of style, things like texture and proportion and playing with silhouette and color, I ultimately think these are the foundation of a slow fashion closet because it changes clothing from old stuff that we're tired of to opportunities for creativity and self-expression. So I'll leave that info in the description, but you can also just find it on the upper menu tab of my channel. The first category is layering textures. I think a lot of us have fall outfits that fall kind of flat, they feel unfinished or uninteresting, and often it comes down to playing with texture to make a more creative and dynamic outfit. The best way to think about playing with textures effectively is to take one texture that feels a certain way, whether it's light and delicate, and offsetting it with something that feels the opposite. I'm gonna give you a couple of examples. The first is silk and faux fur. Silk is really light and romantic, but it's also got a really nice soft drape to it. Whereas faux fur is bulky, it's heavy, it's got a lot of structure, it takes up a lot of visual space. So mixing these two together can create a really great tension and juxtaposition. Silk and faux fur has a very solid reference to, I would say, like the early aughts. I'm thinking of Rachel Zoe, you know, when she had her own TV show and was really big. This was a big combination for her. It really defined that era, in my opinion. It's also very like 70s inspired, feels a little bit like elegant, but still a little bit like folksy and interesting. What I also like about this is it's great for that transition season. You can take the vest off. If you want something that feels more cozy, like you want to lean really heavily into fall, I love the combination of wool and suede. I often think we turn to leather, but if you want something that is a little bit softer, if you're someone who prefers low contrast or low tension looks, then instead of wool and leather, try wool and suede. It feels a lot softer. It's just got less tension because the textures are a little bit more similar in nature. If you want an even more subtle texture play, then try a wool with a tighter knit so it's got a smoother finish. To make this really interesting and work well, I would just make sure that your underlayer is able to be seen from the overlayer. So for example, I'm using this slim fit turtleneck and I'm gonna make sure the sweater that has that fuzzy texture on top has a crew neck or shorter sleeves or sleeves that I can scrunch up. This way we can really appreciate the layering. It's not just about throwing one thing over or under the other. We also have to zhuzh it up a little so that it seems like an intentional choice and so that we can appreciate the layering happening. Finally, if we want something a little bit more dramatic, I would go with a sheer and a leather. And you don't have to have like a sheer top or anything like that. I'm talking the basic sheer that a lot of us probably already have in our closets, and that is stockings or tights. They are really big this season. I have personally always loved tights. Depending on what pattern or color you get, they can be playful. And then when paired with either a leather skirt or simply, you know, a leather loafer or a boot, you can get a really nice sense of tension in your look. This might not seem like complicated layering at all, but I think it's the simplicity that makes this so effective. Layering your outerwear. Okay, I know this isn't necessarily groundbreaking. We have seen so many many like cool TikToks and images of like people layering jackets under coats and all these things, but there are a couple of tips that will make this easier. The first is to style a vest under a jacket. So the vest is obviously easier, it gives you more mobility in your arms, but you still get that layering underneath. I actually like the idea of a longer vest under a shorter jacket. This can work if the hemlines are really similar to each other. So like the vest can peek out a little bit, but not too much. I would say like an inch max, or the vest has to be much longer than the short jacket. This way we actually can appreciate the styling choice. It feels intentional. The hemlines either have to be in sync or really dramatic to get that look. Next is layering a short jacket or any jacket under a long coat. Here you don't have to worry about the hemlines competing or creating too many like weird visuals in the outfit. So I like to pair a more fitted coat under a larger, more voluminous coat. Finally, if you're in a warmer climate, you can still achieve this like double jacket look by doing a denim jacket under a blazer. Now, of course, the blazer does have to be a boxier, more voluminous one, but I always find that denim under a blazer is such a classic look. I love the texture play. I also like the difference in styles here. You've got something casual with something a little bit more polished. This can also work with just a simple chambray shirt worn open under the blazer. I get a lot of questions about collars. Do you squish the collar underneath? If you have two collars, do you pop it? Essentially, the collar underneath is entirely up to you. I personally don't love taking it out and over the collar of the jacket. I know this is kind of trending and there's a lot of really good 90s references happening, but maybe it's because I grew up in that era that I don't love the collar sticking out over the lapel of a jacket. I like to keep the collar tucked inside whatever the outerwear collar is, or the outer layer collar, or I'll pop both collars together. Next is layering different style vibes. And I'm not just talking about mixing two different style vibes or style personalities in an outfit. I'm talking about doing this with layering in mind. So here's an example. If I'm gonna start an outfit with a classic button-up shirt and I want to add a layer or a third piece, rather than go with what is predictable and in line with the mood of the button-up shirt, I would go for something in the complete opposite direction, or just not in the same direction as the button-up. So something that will rough it up a little bit, something that will mess it up and bring it a more casual feel. So my first instinct for a button-up, you know, we kind of think maybe a blazer or a cardigan, and this just feels really corporate. I mean, I love a button-up under a blazer, but if we want to get creative and we want to start training our brain to think a little bit differently, then I would instead throw on perhaps a bomber jacket or really cool textured jacket, or even maybe a moto perhaps. So we're getting that texture play as well as vibes or moods that are clashing a little bit. So we feel that tension a little bit more. Next is layering silhouettes. So essentially we're talking about layering fit and volume, and this can go both ways. For example, layering something more voluminous underneath something fitted or tight. So if we take a flowy blouse layered underneath a bustier, something really, really fitted. This might seem kind of counterintuitive. It's definitely going to create a very specific mood or vibe, but it doesn't have to be a bustier. I'm showing you the extremes here. So maybe you have a more fitted dress, for example, and you want to try layering a looser blouse or just like a, you know, a boxier button-up shirt or something like that underneath. Depending on your style and what you have in your closet, adjust the volume and the fit and play with those. All you're doing is playing with something more fitted over something more voluminous. You can also obviously play with fit and volume and do something more fitted under something more voluminous, but I think this is just like the essence and foundation of layering, and I told you I would give you some different ideas, so we're gonna skip that one. Finally, accessories. This is a really great and often overlooked place where you can layer, and these might feel really subtle. Some of you might even argue that this isn't even layering at all, but I consider it that way because it does require some thought and intention. The first is socks. socks and loafers, socks and boots. If you've got like a really cool high sock, layer it underneath a tall boot. That's really interesting. You can even layer that over a pair of tights or stockings. So it doesn't necessarily only work for clothing. Next is scarves. We often see scarves as the last like throw on thing when you're walking out the door, but belting a scarf over your outfit or over your coat is a really beautiful look. Or even taking a scarf over a higher neckline really underscores the essence of layering. I also count layered jewelry as layering. So stacking a bunch of necklaces or stacking a bunch of rings on one finger. And I especially love mixing my metals. If I were cool enough, like doing a bunch of earrings would also be like layering. So this is where you can really play with texture and metal. I love mixing silver, gold, rose gold. If you've got little like, you know, sparklies or anything that has like a rougher jewelry texture. Leather as well, the leather string with something silver. Layering in your accessories can create an entirely different look. Belts. I count adding a belt in certain places as layering too. If you've got a blazer or a long sweater or even a dress or a sweater dress, try throwing a belt on, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at your waist. It can be lower down so that it accentuates or creates some more shape in your hips. We often think that we shouldn't put a belt if we don't want it to accentuate that certain part of our body. But if you're wearing a column, like a dress for example, and you throw a belt on, you're not accentuating your stomach at all. It is just creating a focal point. And if you add a third layer on top of that, you're creating a really beautiful column with an even like sort of smaller focal point at your midsection. Or you can even belt your outerwear. I think this is so chic, and especially since we're wearing more outerwear in this season, it's really fun to add those layers onto our outerwear as well. So that is what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know if you liked it or if you learned something new, and if you did, give this video a thumbs up. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget I've got that course in the little menu down below, and I will also leave it in the description box below. I truly hope you enjoy it if you do give it a go and purchase it. Thank you so much for watching and for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and I will see you in the next slow fashion video. Ciao!